What is up, guys? Welcome back to Paint Bravely, the podcast where you can find a little bit of encouragement, discover new ways to make your hobby more fun, and most importantly, learn to paint bravely. And we are back once again, and we're going to start with a couple of updates and then get into some pretty fun topics. So, Brent, what have you been up to?
Well, starting with me. Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Paint Bravely. I'll stall here for a second. Okay, let's talk about the Nova Open Charitable Foundation Raffle. So, this is a raffle that normally corresponds with the Nova Open event, convention, gaming convention, yeah. And it has been happening every year for, I don't know, the last 10 years or so. And normally, along with the convention is a charity raffle of, people donating painted models and armies and stuff like that. And people buy raffle tickets and somebody goes home with some sweet armies and models. And this year I contributed 3 squads of Blood Angels to this event and made a couple of videos of painting up those Blood Angels. And anyway, that event is running right now, so if it is before September 6th, when you're listening to this, you could buy raffle tickets and see how that goes. And of course, this will be back next year, presumably. Presumably, there might even be an actual Nova Open event next year. But I wanted to give this a little bit of a plug, but I also wanted to just ramble a bit about the ethics of whether or not I should buy tickets myself to this event. So,
I would say yes, 100% you should buy tickets. I mean, because you painted 3 squads and it's a full army, right? Like 2,000 points or more of Blood Angels.
So I'm not allowed to buy tickets for the item I submitted.
The Blood Angels.
Because that would be a terrible look if the person who painted them won them.
Very true.
Especially, man, what if that happened like a couple times in the same year? Like the people who painted the armies won the armies? That would be a terrible look.
I mean, it would be sort of, right? Like, it's an auction, so you would presumably have paid the most money out of anyone else. Or I suppose it depends. Like,
well, it's just a raffle. So statistically, I mean, you got a better chance if you really buy a lot of those tickets, but it's still a bad look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be weird. Don't do that.
Yeah, because
the other
time there's a raffle, you can make the accusation that it's rigged or not fair, or they're playing favorites with who won it. There was no random number generator. They just gave it to old Brent, So I am not allowed to bid on the Blood Angels.
Yeah, that makes sense. If they pulled your name, they just pretend they didn't,
That's possible. Mistakes have been made before, Best Picture has gone to the wrong picture at the Oscars before. Mistakes are made. You can't rely on every cog in the machine being on the ball with these things, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But there are like 30 other items on the raffle sheet, which I am not technically prohibited from buying tickets for.
Okay.
So, Duncan Rhodes did a night that's being raffled off. Vince Venturella has a couple items that are, one is a very nice painted, Imperial Fist Space Marine, like a very smooth yellow, very, very nice looking Marine. And then Vince also he took all of his paper from his wet palettes for the last year and stuck them down inside a picture frame. And it's called A Year of Wasted Paint.
Oh, wow.
And so it's just a giant framed image of just old wet palette paper. And it's very colorful. It's got a feel to it. It's got an aesthetic. It's got a style. So there's...
It's funny you say that. I've been thinking about that. Like, using my old palette paper, because I stack it up kind of in a corner to just send to people as I ship models out, just to wrap everything up in. I haven't done that yet, but I've thought about it. I thought,
Yeah.
would it be too weird? But now that Vince has done it, obviously it's art. So,
Well, there are times when it's actually really beautiful. When I was working on some lizard men, some Seraphon, the colors involved with, trying out different scales and skin tones, and you got your greens and your teals and your oranges. That wet palette was beautiful. I was just trying out all of my best colors and seeing what happened, and the excess paint from that thing, I should have saved that. I really should have. I think I threw it away, and then afterwards I was kicking myself. But anyway, if you want Vince's old wet palette paper, you can bid on that. So here's where the ethics get tricky, though. I've just told you about a few of the items I'm interested in, which may make my odds of getting them lower, because maybe by me saying like Vince just painted a really awesome, Captain Lysander or whatever it is, maybe more people are going to be bidding on Captain Lysander. So what if this is all a misdirection?
Possible, yeah.
Maybe I'm actually more interested in the Dave Taylor Ultramarines. What if my play is to distract people from the item I really want? Is that unethical? I don't know.
I mean, for charity, no.
Okay.
You're just getting more people to give to charity. Like, is that bad? No, it's not bad. But I know
pay no attention to this dragon model over here,
Right, exactly. Yeah. It's the only one you didn't mention.
Yeah, I'm just hyping up all the models except this sweet dragon.
They're all so good. This dragon,
all my chips on the table.
So good.
Like I'm all in on dragon. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I don't know what the ethics are like on that. I haven't decided if or how many tickets I'm buying this year. Hopefully just doting the Marines and hyping it a little bit helps, but we'll think about it.
Every little bit helps.
We've got a little bit of time here. All right, your turn, Casey. What's new with you?
Ooh, my turn. Well, I've been working on an awesome orc army, and I made a decision about that. So normally when I work on stuff, like I like to throw it back up on eBay, just to further the hobby, keep the channel going. But in this case, I decided that I'm not going to sell these orcs. They're just too awesome. So I am keeping a full 40k orc army that hopefully I will actually be able to play in a game this year. But I'm definitely keeping it, not getting rid of it. And I'm so happy about it.
Dude, I like it. That's awesome. That's a great call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I've kept something.
Yeah. As we're recording this, I think your first video with those orcs came out yesterday. And this was the first time of me really seeing that army, and it looks awesome. It really does. It's an exciting blend of units and everything. And, I haven't seen what paint scheme you're going to do with them. I've just seen them all built up and fixed up and primed and stuff. But I think it's good. Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. I'm not sure what colors I'm going to go with yet. Like I've painted a lot of Iron Jaws, and that's, the whole yellow thing, and especially that whole pink to yellow trick. And I kind of want to avoid that, and I'm not sure what I want to go with. I haven't even looked anything up yet. I haven't looked into color schemes, or I don't even know how Games Workshop paints them. So I don't know if I'm going to look anything up, or if it would be more exciting to just put paint on a model and see what happens. But I do want to paint it all in one go.
Well, let's go through some options here. If you got green skin, you're probably not using green. Can we rule out green? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, you've done yellow before. Now, yellow looks nice with orcs, but you've done it before. Can we rule it out? Can we cross yellow off the list?
Yeah, I think so. Just for the sake of not retreading old territory. Yeah, let's just rule out yellow entirely for armor.
Okay.
Yeah, that feels weird, but yeah.
Okay, Guy at Midwinter Minis did a purple army. Does that...
Right, which I'm definitely going to avoid.
Okay. Okay, so that's
I
half
don't
the
want
color
to. I don't
wheel
want to
right
make
there.
the same video that he did, right? Like, because I want to sit down and paint all of these in a very short time period. And I don't want to do the same thing that he did, because his are his orcs, and I want mine to be my orcs, right? So definitely avoiding purple. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, we're working our way around the color wheel here. Okay.
How many we have left? I'm just gonna say no
Well,
to everything.
okay, well let's get our stuff that's not really on the color wheel. Black or white? Black, white, tan, brown.
Yeah, like black could be cool.
Okay.
Probably not white. I think white's
Not white,
a little
no.
weird for orcs. No. But like black armor with like and actually, you know, like white checker, like a checkerboard on the shoulder pads, that kind of thing. So, you know,
You said you
that
wanted to
could
do
work.
this quickly?
That's a good point, but I have a Cricut cutter, and I'm going to use my old awesome stencil technique to make those. And I'm pretty sure I can make them small enough. I don't know yet. I haven't tested it.
Yeah, let me know how it goes. I'm always a little bit skeptical of stencils that do a checkerboard pattern, because like the squares are supposed to connect at the corners, you know, or none of the black squares are actually connected to each other. There's just, you know, maybe sort of at the corners. And so does that mean you have a rectangle and then you have a bunch of tiny squares that you're laying out as the stencil? You know? There's probably a clever workaround to that situation, but yes, yeah, like a checkerboard pattern is the perfect example of when you would want a stencil, but also it doesn't work unless you have a really clever workaround to that, because yeah, none of the black squares actually touch the other black squares. So in terms of a physical stencil,
yeah, and if you just painted a little line in, it would look stupid. That's a very interesting point.
So I'm shooting down all your ideas here, Casey. We're going through all of the colors and all of the patterns and telling you why you can't do it. And eventually we're going to settle on you're doing an orange army. So
okay.
Did you ever play like Warcraft 2 or Warcraft 3 or StarCraft or anything like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I always liked how, you know, especially in multiplayer games or whatever, you would have, you know, 8 different colors for the same units. Yeah. The orc grunts would have the shoulder pad that would either be red, or it was interesting which colors were one of the 8 colors. You know, teal was often a color. So like a lot of times, you know, red and blue would be the ones you'd most commonly see in the game. But then you go to play a multiplayer game, and then all of a sudden there's the teal army and the white and the black shoulder pads. Yeah.
Man, that's crazy. I haven't thought about that in years. I totally remember.
So in some ways, you know, a lot of different colors could work, but in some ways, when you actually go to paint a whole army, do you really have that choice? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question, because I mean the variety of units that I have, I mean there are a lot. There are a lot of different types of models. So I don't know. I have to find something that I can incorporate into a lot of vehicles, as well as just the straight units. Orange is not a bad idea, because a lot of the what Def Coptas and Killicans, I want them to just be a rusty mess. So like orange could work if I do like strong metallics and different things, and then throw a bunch of rust onto those vehicles. And then all of the units have like, you know, orange shoulder pads with something on it, whatever it is. If it's checkers or chevrons, I don't know. Whatever ends up working best, I guess. But orange isn't bad. Yeah, and if I do purple as an undertone to the green skin, that could be nice.
Yeah. Hey, I'm excited to see what you come up with here. And I really am liking this change of you occasionally just rescuing a whole army on your channel.
Right, I got 2 of them.
It's nice, yeah.
I got 2 of them waiting right now. So I got these orcs, and then I have another large corn demons army that looks like actual garbage. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if I found them in a garbage can. Yeah, that one's going to be fun.
Have you started the rescue on that? I mean, are you just going to make them super nasty, or are you
Yeah.
going to try to file down the hot glue, or what are you going to do?
Some of them are pretty bad. I don't know. They could go that way, like just super disgusting. But you know, I don't want it to be a giant red blob either, because that's kind of the danger with the corn demons. Everything's just red. I have done one demon model with like a blue ice sword, like the classic kind of look to it. So there'll probably be some of that in there. But I haven't even gone through the units yet. You know, I've kind of looked at a few of them, and most of them are still packed up. So I don't know, that one could be interesting. I might need some help with that one eventually.
Yeah, you have to decide if you want the heirs to be part of the army, or if you're gonna actually try to fix them up, or
Yeah,
give them Nurgle slime all over everything. I don't know.
This blood for the blood god. Just dump it on.
Yeah, or do the thing you did, make them stone corn
Right.
demons and glue on
Yeah,
some
that's what I'll
moss
do.
all over everything that's nasty. Yeah.
I think that'd be great. Just I'm painting another army, guys, like stone cast or stone demons round 2. Just do that like 3 or 4 times in a row. It works.
I think building up a running joke like that is pretty fun, actually.
Yeah. Just change the color
Just,
from blue to
yeah.
red.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I mean, I did kind of think like, okay, well, I could cover the models in what is it? A Grelin Earth, the crackle paint, and just have them be
Sure.
lava demons. You know, kind of the same thing, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're joking a little bit here,
Little
but
bit.
these are reasonable workarounds. Like
Oh yeah.
these are not terrible ideas. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you have models
If
that
you
are
have
missing
some-
parts or are just broken, like someone stepped on half of them, you have to figure something out that like kind of folds into the narrative, right? So having them be stone, if they're broken bits, makes sense because a lot of pieces of old stone fall off. So, you know, running with a theme that ties everything together is really helpful.
Yeah. Stone, lava monsters, swamp monsters, fire. Yeah. Any of that stuff is a reasonable workaround. Find a way in universe that explains why they're not pristine the way that somebody else's corn army is going to look, and you can make it work. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that's what I've been doing. Yeah, it's been good. I don't know. It's like, I feel like my hobby's taken this weird turn in the last month or so of just being way more exciting for some reason. I don't know if it's getting, you know, a 3D printer and kind of having this whole world open up to me that I never knew about before, or what it is, but I'm feeling pretty good about the hobby lately.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, it's always interesting to see how, you know, as individuals we're wandering down different pathways, and I don't know if our viewers are always excited by the pathways that we wander down, but
Right?
yeah, I know for myself, I'm just kind of had a lot of 3D printing projects pile up one after another here.
Yeah.
And I put out a couple of videos recently, and I have a couple more coming up pretty soon here. Partially from like collaborations with different companies, but also, you know, some of the minis that I've been shopping for or seeing across my stream have been 3D print minis that I am excited to buy and print and start painting way faster than I can order and have a mini shipped to me, you know?
Yeah, there is something nice about that almost instant gratification of just having it, you know, like the next day or within 4 hours or something.
Yeah, so a mini that I've come across recently and just had to buy and print, and I've got it primed up and I'll paint it soon, is a combat wheelchair.
Oh yeah,
which
yeah.
opens up. Yeah, you've seen these?
I saw them on Instagram too. And I've seen them on Facebook. They've been kind of making the rounds through a lot of the hobby groups. Yeah, they're awesome. Yeah. Continue.
Yeah. So the story on these is, I don't know, a month back, somebody wrote some homebrew rules for how to include a wheelchair in D&D. And, you know, it's in the vein of inclusion and being able to customize your character to maybe reflect who you are in real life, or maybe not, but just to include, you know, wheelchair users in D&D. And I mean, a couple of things happened from that. One, enough people thought it was a good idea that a couple of mini companies started making some pretty awesome minis of characters who use a wheelchair. And, you know, I printed off a rogue character who we will definitely be talking about here. And, you know, of course, associated with homebrew rules for a wheelchair in D&D, there was backlash from the usual 4chan types. But, yeah, this is an interesting controversy in that the other side is so wrong that I'm not even motivated to get up in arms about it. It's just like, yeah, more options for your character, always a good thing. More, yeah, like whether you are not a wheelchair user, whether you want to play that in your game, cool, more options, good. Yeah.
Like,
and
how could that ever...
my understanding is that, you know, some of the backlash was, you know, whether or not it's realistic in a game of Dungeons and Dragons, right? Or whether it,
oh my god, like,
you know, or whether it gives unfair benefits, like just
what, like Disneyland benefits? DM. Is that what they mean? Like, you get to cut the line? Like, what?
Oh no, don't even go there. Don't even go there.
I'm so confused by people sometimes. Like, what could they possibly have? Whatever. Yeah.
And then there were all the arguments about, you know, what about stairs? Like, just, it's a game of creativity. Figure it out.
Right.
It's a game of creativity. If you can't deal with stairs, like you're not good at Dungeons and Dragons. You don't understand what it is to be good at Dungeons and Dragons. It's also a social game. Part of the game is being able to work with people in the game and out of the game.
Problems.
So either in the game, figure out a way to, you know, have somebody help you out with the stairs situation, or out of the game, say to your DM, like, hey, maybe this is a ramp, you know? Maybe not everything is a problem for me here. Maybe we can just gloss over how the, you know, barbarian walked up the stairs and I used whatever system I used to get up the stairs. Like, maybe that's not the important part of this game that we're playing together. Maybe this is the least important part of going through a dungeon.
Yeah. Just, I mean, it's just cool to see that people are thinking outside the box a little bit and coming up with really cool model designs to reflect essentially a choice as a character to play in a game of fantasy. Like you said, whether or not someone is in a wheelchair or isn't, it doesn't really matter. And how you handle problems in a fantasy game doesn't really matter. I cannot fathom why someone would have an actual problem with that.
I mean, we knew there would be these people, but it's one of those things where, you know, I could get really upset about it, but for some reason I'm not, just because it's so obvious how wrong these people are. But anyway, for me, I saw the mini, and just on the mini alone, how cool this character was. So there's a company, Strata Miniatures, who's put out 4 different classes in the combat wheelchair. I think they're going to make at least 8 more for some of the other classes in D&D.
Sweet.
And the rogue character, okay, so it's a wheelchair, except instead of 2 big wheels and 2 small wheels. It's 2 big wheels and then 4 small wheels, you know, extra stability or whatever. But the really cool features of this lady rogue is that she has throwing knives on the big wheels of her wheelchair.
Yeah, I saw that. That's
so
cool.
So like as she's rolling along, like the pommels of the throwing knives are just right there, ready for her hands, and she could do like sweet, you know, underhanded flicks and throwing these knives everywhere. And she's also got it, and there's just a ton of little cool details, like on the kind of on the back of the wheelchair, she has adventuring gear, you know, packs, sleeping roll, rope, crossbow, all this cool stuff. And then I think my favorite detail is in the front of the wheelchair, she has drawers. Like, you know, under her legs, she has a set of drawers. So what could a rogue put in those drawers, Casey?
Poisons? Yeah. Knife?
What else?
I feel like you're trying to prompt me here, and I feel like I'm going to fail that test there. Yeah, not poison? More knives?
Well, the point is she could put all kinds of stuff in there. Poisons, lockpicks, more knives.
That's true.
A forgery kit. She could have, you know, really essentially all 4 of those drawers are going to have false bottoms, and there's just going to be more hidden stuff in there. She is going to be the smuggling character.
Right, yeah.
This lady is going to get through all the customs checkpoints with whatever the group needs to be smuggling across. And so I just think it was really cool because, yeah, I can see this character having a little problem with stairs. But on the other hand, it's also representing a character that is encumbered in the ways that like a normal D&D character would be. In terms
That's an interesting way to look at it, yeah.
Yeah, she's actually, you can believe that she has all the gear that's on your character sheet.
It's all stashed away in, you know, specific places all over the chair. That's interesting. Is there an encumbrance rule in D&D? I have no idea.
There's, I mean, I don't follow the rules carefully, but there's rules about how much you can carry for sure. Yeah.
I just think that's an interesting take on that. Like, just from a gameplay perspective, you know, cheating the rules a little bit by saying, well, obviously I can carry 10 times more than you can, you know.
Right. I mean, on a character sheet, it is kind of fun to think about, you know, what it says that you're carrying around. You have an adventurer's pack that has rope and torches and this many rations.
Right.
And you have a sleeping roll and, I don't know, you've got your armor repair kit, and you normally have, you got your whittling kit, and I don't know, depending on what your character is, you have a pretty good list of things that you can be carrying around, plus your loot or whatever. So I'm sure this has already been done, but it would be interesting to see like a YouTube video of someone cosplaying as if they were actually walking around with all this crap.
Way too much
your
stuff.
paladin with their full armor and their shield and their mace and their books also has just a bunch of rope and a bunch of food and a bunch of I mean, it's useful for the game to be able to say that, yeah, you're walking around with 10 spare torches and your tinderbox, but it doesn't really make sense, except this rogue character, it makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, she's got a chest of drawers under her legs there, where she's keeping all her rogue stuff. And the last thing I wanted to say, she just has a sweet headband, and like this character looks awesome. And it's just one of those things where, because I have a 3D printer, saw this model, immediately bought it for €5 or pounds or whatever, printed it off, and good to go.
Have you painted it, or you just got it all printed?
So I got it zenithal primed.
Ooh, yeah.
And then I printed this 200% height. So, I mean, it's a bigger is not a huge mini, but it's a nice size for painting. You can really see the details on that size.
Yeah, yeah.
But I did the thing where I printed it hollow and I forgot to put holes in it. Have you tried this yet?
Yeah, so I saw something about it that you need to punch a hole in it so that you don't have resin floating around uncured. Is that what's going on? It's basically like a water bottle now?
Yeah, you cracked the code, Casey. Yeah, so I needed to fix that, but I did get some fun video footage that'll be in a video eventually. I have a nice primed mini, and then you can kind of see like a little bit of like a wet spot.
Right.
It ended up being kind of near the ankles where the wet spot was on this mini, but kind of, yeah, it's a hollow print, so you're not using a solid chunk of resin,
Yeah.
but some of the resin that you're, quote unquote saving got locked in the hollow space anyway and is leaking out. So I have a video where I'm taking a Dremel to the bottom of this mini to open it up,
Right.
and a lot of resin comes out.
Oh man, that's
So
great.
I had a pretty nice zenithal highlight on it. I was ready to paint up this nice mini, and I can see like, oh no, there's a little bit of resin in there.
Yeah.
So I put a tiny hole kind of in between the ankles and was just dabbing it with a paper towel. Like, yeah, I think there's a lot more in there. So I took a larger drill bit on my Dremel, came at it from below, and busted in with a large size Dremel, and just many milliliters of resin just come like squirting out at the bottom of this mini. And I should have printed it solid. Like, I should have just
right.
invested the extra 20 cents of resin and printed it solid. But
that's the thing. Like when it comes down to it, that's literally what it is, right? It's like a quarter.
It depends
it's
on the
not
mini.
very much
for this
money.
one. Yeah, but it was a situation where, okay, so now it's primed and it's now covered in resin. So ordinarily what you're supposed to do is when you're setting up your print run in the computer program, you drill a hole so that it prints with a hole in the mini so that you can drain the excess resin out.
Yeah.
So that it doesn't, and I forgot to do that, and I ended up manually putting in the hole a couple days later after I'd primed it and everything. So then this thing is, it's primed and then it's just covered in resin. So I had to, take it down, wash it with alcohol, and then like re-prime it. But now we're good to go, Casey.
Yeah,
now
all
we're
right.
good to go. So.
Sweet. And you got all of that on video, right?
A lot of it, yeah. I think I got pretty good in focus, in frame shots of
the
putting that Dremel right through the bottom of the mini and then squirting out the resin. So,
oh man,
yeah, for our videos, it's fun to show the good moments and the funny bad moments too.
Yes, I mean, because it's something that
I'm not
will
too upset
happen.
about this one. It's funny.
Yeah, it's gonna happen, and it's much better to have it on video to share.
Yeah. So you're welcome. You're welcome. I'll try not to make that mistake too many more times in the future. Like, it is really annoying. It is.
Yeah.
It feels bad, except for the fact that I'm like, okay, this is silly. Somebody's going to get a laugh out of this. And I got some decent footage of it. But
yeah.
And I'm glad that, when I put the Dremel through, it wasn't like just a little bit of a leak came through. It was like a ton of resin came out when I shoved that Dremel through, and really made the point pretty well, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I've hollowed a few models out, and I haven't had any of those issues yet. And I used the punch tool in the Anycubic software, and I think that put a hole in it, but I'm not sure. But I haven't had anything leaking out, so I think I'm good. I have a feeling this is going to happen to me at some point, though. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, we're going to make that mistake. And I thought it was being clever, okay.
Yeah.
We're printing a larger size mini here.
Mm-hmm.
Don't want to waste all that resin. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't want to waste all that resin. Larger size mini. Nope. Should have just printed it solid. Or printed it hollow with a hole in it. But live and learn.
Yeah.
Live and learn.
For sure. So that's kind of one of those things. It's a little bit, would you say, eye-opening in the hobby? Not the resin, but having these really cool models come out of nowhere. It's just something you you saw and were immediately excited about and wanted to pursue.
Yes, Casey, good transition.
I'm trying, man.
No, I think you did a great job.
I had it earlier before that conversation. I did it. And then it was glossed over. So we're going to make a point.
Did you?
To transition right now. At least I am.
Okay, so the main topic of today's episode,
yes,
we're gonna get into these big moments in our hobby lives where we discover something new, maybe that just we didn't realize existed, or sometimes the hobby itself discovers or invents something new.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is an interesting, kind of smaller example of somebody came up with the idea for a combat wheelchair, which maybe there were a few wheelchair minis out there before, but not like this. Definitely none like this. And it's one of those things where that's a really cool idea.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of like a undeveloped possible avenue of our hobby, like a new genre of minis almost. And whether, in this case, it was almost like the hobby as a whole was like, yeah, that's a good idea. We're going to do this.
Yeah.
But sometimes these moments happen more on an individual level where just Gunpla has been out there forever, but Casey just figures out that Gunpla is a thing and gets really into big robots for a while,
Right. You can't see it in the video.
Let's talk about some of these big moments then.
Yeah. Well, I have a pretty good story about airbrushing in particular. So when I started in the hobby 20 whatever years ago at this point, like I got some brushes, I got some paints, a handful of models, and I was starting to do this stuff. And since there wasn't any way to learn online or YouTube or any of this stuff, it was basically just White Dwarf. And we all know that Games Workshop really doesn't talk about airbrushing. So even back then, they certainly didn't, because it really wasn't a thing. But I was painting for a little while, and then for like Christmas or my birthday or something, my parents got me an airbrush from Harbor Freight. And they said, hey, this is for painting small things. You should try this. And I mean, I'm like 12 years old, right? They didn't get me a compressor because they assumed that somehow, or my dad did, that he could like hook it up to like a larger compressor, right? But never really did anything with that. And when I got it, I was kind of excited about it. I didn't want to be mean, obviously. It's a gift. But I was like, this isn't how you paint miniatures. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, this tiny brush is what you do this job with. And I kind of just forgot about it, Like, I still have that airbrush somewhere. But it's been sitting in my garage for that long. And obviously, coming back to the hobby and this relatively new thing, the airbrush, right, is being used for our hobby. And it was like, when I saw people, and probably specifically Kenny from Next Level Painting, use the airbrush, like that light bulb went off. And I had to go look for an airbrush. And I found my old one. It didn't work, It was also a siphon feed, so it was garbage airbrush, whatever. But yeah, that completely changed the way that I even looked at the hobby. And I don't even think I've made a video where I haven't used an airbrush. Like, I don't think I've painted a miniature without using an airbrush since before.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, tools and materials like that can be a really big, eye-opening, paradigm-shifting sort of event in our hobby lives. And that's the sort of stuff we're talking about. Yeah, when you actually hook up an airbrush to an airbrush compressor and you actually put some paint in there and see what it can do, that can be a really big moment. And I know a lot of our viewers will be like, yeah, they ignore the parts of your videos where you're using an airbrush, or like, yeah, I don't have room for that, I can do this with a paintbrush, or whatever.
Yeah.
There are perfectly valid reasons to not use an airbrush, whether you know about them or not,
Yeah.
But yeah, when you actually start doing it for yourself and you see the possibilities, it really changes the way you think about how to plan a paint scheme, how to accomplish certain parts of your painting regimen there.
Yeah.
And yeah, the same is true for materials. So I know, like, the first time I figured out that artist inks shot really well out of an airbrush, you don't have to thin them down, they're less likely to jam things up.
Yeah.
They don't speckle as much, they give really smooth transitions. That was a moment where I kept going out to Michael's every weekend and seeing if they were having a sale.
Yeah.
And I went to like several different craft stores to see which of the FW Dollarowny acrylic ink line they had, which of the Liquitex artist inks they had in stock, whether or not they were having any, BOGO sales, buy one, get one.
Yeah.
And, at this point, I stocked up. I got most of the colors that are regularly stocked in those ink lines. And yeah, sometimes you just figure out a new product that you like, and it just opens up a pathway of, oh man, this brown was cool, let's try the yellow, let's try the green, let's try the blue, even the white is good. Okay, let's try the metallic one, let's try the metallic ink. Okay, it was worth a try.
It was worth a try.
Yeah.
Bummer.
But yeah, I absolutely love those moments where you learn about something new and that just opens up a new road for you. And those first steps down that road are so much fun.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, that new discovery, every single time that you find one of those things, I think it's what keeps a lot of people in the hobby. It's those breakthrough moments, even if it's just when you're painting and you kind of figure out that technique or whatever it is, and the model comes out even better for it. It's just pushing you to keep discovering new things. When I started using oils to do washes or, enamels, same basic thing. Yeah, that was kind of another big moment for me. Being able to do all of this weathering and black lining and all this stuff, and having the ability to just take it all off if I wanted to, was like, oh my God, there's an undo button. Like, it's like Photoshop. It's amazing. That editing process is now something to be mastered. Yeah, and that was one of those kinds of things. They're just kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to me to see how some of these things are individuals. We learn about something, or, the hobby as a whole has kind of known about airbrushing for 10 years, maybe. Yeah. But then it's still a big thing in each person's life when they, okay, I've got a space for set up an airbrushing station. I'm not worried if there's a little bit of airbrush fumes in this room, or maybe I actually have a venting system. Yeah. And okay, I've got my compressor, I'm good to go, let's load it up. Oh, wow, I just got a smooth prime coat on all these minis. I didn't have to go outside and use a rattle can. I didn't melt anything. Right. I could actually see what I was doing while I was painting it. And so it's interesting how some of these things can be individual, but you were just mentioning oil paints. And it seems like the mini painting community has kind of rediscovered oil paints in the last year or so. Oil washes have been around for a couple years longer than that in terms of like really known in the collective hobby knowledge that gets shared frequently. And what else? Contrast paints were just a year ago. Yeah. And so the method of painting using washes was something that, some people definitely knew a couple years ago, but was not being commonly used. And so it's fascinating to see the group mind learn and rediscover these things.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's, you know, all of us are learning the same thing at once, which is also fun, you know. Not the individual excitement, but like the group excitement of, I need to try, okay, I tried the red contrast paint, now I got to go out and get 5 more colors.
Right.
You know, spend my week's disposable funds on that, you know.
Yeah. Well, I think with this hive mind of, you know, hobby on the internet these days too, like there's so much testing going on constantly that where, you know, painting with washes back in the day was, you know, I'm going to water down this ink and then put in a little dish soap so it runs a little nicer. And like, that's how you did it. Like that was the secret that you had to go to a hobby shop to figure out. Right. And now, because we're all in this together and talking constantly, like we're figuring out these techniques faster than ever, you know? It's almost like, you know, a new magic set comes out and it's like, oh, it's been a week, it's solved. Like we know what the best of everything is, you know? Like obviously it takes a little bit longer with the painting and techniques and these kinds of things, but it feels like that. You know, we're all getting together and cracking the code on things like contrast paints. Yeah, it makes for a really exciting time in the hobby. Like we know more than ever at this point, but we're also discovering more than ever at the same time. Like we are starting to do things in this hobby that scale modelers have been doing for 40 years. You know, like shipping.
That's what I wanted to talk about a little bit is, you know, one of the discoveries you can make is just one of these kind of parallel hobbies.
Yeah.
So scale modeling has been around for a lot longer than Warhammer or Dungeons and Dragons or, you know, any of the other games have been. And model planes by somebody who knows how to paint a model plane or a tank or a 1957 Chevy something. Right. These things can look amazing.
Yeah.
Because that hobby has been around and has gotten that institutional knowledge and that tradition. And it really pays off for us to pay attention to one of those other communities. So something I did want to bring up today was talking about what other communities intersect ours and how that can also be a really eye-opening and expanding moment in our own education. So scale modeling is one.
For sure. Would you include train hobbyists in there? Because that's...
I think so. So
it's interesting.
I'll admit that I don't know enough about those communities to know, like, there might be some sharp dividing lines in there.
That's a very good point. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah. So, you know, as part of our expanding our minds, like I remember when I was younger going to a store and there'd be Warhammer models and there'd also be War Machine models. And I remember thinking, like, War Machine nerds, like,
right.
Get that garbage out of here. I don't want anything to do with that. Why do you even stock this? Like, this is stupid.
Yeah.
And I think, I'm not sure that I actually like any of the War Machine models, but I think Hordes has some pretty good models, you know?
Yeah.
These days I'm much more interested in you know, models outside of Games Workshop or what have you.
Yeah.
Part of it is just the willingness to learn about an adjacent hobby or whatnot. But so yeah, I don't know if there are some sharp lines between the train people and the tank people. You know?
Yeah. Train guys and
train
tank
people
guys,
and the car people.
Let us know down in the comments whether or not that's
I'm actually really interested.
Yeah.
Now. I'm curious. Like, I think there could probably be some good drama there, you know?
It's very interesting to think about. What kind of drama goes on in scale modeling.
Or the train people, and they walk past the Revel model kits of cars and stuff. They just shake their heads like noobs. So I don't know.
Yeah. Oh man, I knew this guy a long time ago. Weirdly, he worked at like an O'Reilly's. Used to go in and buy like spark plugs from him for my dirt bikes. And like we rode together a few times, but I went over to his house once because he was selling me a bike, and turned out that he had an entire room in his house that was just cars, scale cars. And like, it was a massive hobby room. You know, he was showing me all this crazy stuff. And like, I mean, I knew what Warhammer was at the time, obviously. And it was crazy fascinating. Like, he was talking about how, you know, like, oh, you got to mix this paint in such a way and you get that, you know, it looks like a car and it has to be applied, you know, however, in some certain way. And he was talking about like he was making wires for the engines so that it represented the electronics inside the car. And he would paint those each, you know, a different color, whatever. And he'd open the thing up and he'd flock the entire inside to make it kind of this like fuzzy interior. And it was just like this whole thing I'd never heard of or seen before. This dude had an entire bedroom's worth of stuff in it. Just kind of nuts.
Yeah, that is awesome. And it's just a little switch in our brains between like, this isn't what I do, don't care, like nerd,
Right.
Cars are stupid, to just a tiny little switch to be like, wow, this guy has so many ideas. This community has been working on some of the problems that ours is, you know, tangentially interested in. I could learn so much from standing in this room for, you know, hours and asking this guy questions, right?
Yeah.
So one thing that I wanted to bring up is something I discovered, I don't know, a few months back. Model horses.
Okay. I've heard of this.
So these are... I looked into this earlier today, but they're 1 to 9 scale or something like that. So these models are, I don't know, big-ish compared to mini games. They're, I don't know if they're a foot long or not, but they're decently big.
They're decently big, and it does vary
You know,
depending on the material that it's made of. Yeah.
Oh, it depends on the horse for sure. Yeah. But there's one company that seems to be pretty big, Breyer model horses.
I think that's their GW.
Yeah, that's their GW. Yeah, and I think maybe the size of a Baneblade, but not as expensive as a Baneblade, and it's a horse.
Yeah.
Did I explain it right?
That
I
felt
guess.
good.
I don't know.
Baneblade, but horse.
Yeah, and you know, horses are certainly tangentially related to what we do, and painting models and toys is certainly related to what we do. And anyway, there are YouTubers out there who, what they do is they paint model horses. And they have a lot of the same tools and supplies that we have. They have airbrushes. Some of the, you know, lines of paint they use is the same. You know, I was watching this one lady who was using golden acrylics.
Oh yeah.
For everything. They've got their pastels. They've got their weathering powders. Sometimes they also will use like colored pencils and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's fascinating because some of the stuff they do is exactly what they do, or exactly what we do. You know, they'll prime up their model, and then they'll grab the airbrush and they'll start hitting the muscle groups, and then later they'll do some weathering. But it's fascinating. The differences are the really fascinating part.
Yeah.
So, okay, so Casey, you are painting a horse with an airbrush. Walk me through what you do.
Well, I have
what colors are you using, and what order are you going in?
I have a pretty awesome video tutorial if you are interested on painting Riders of Rohan from Lord of the Rings. And I go through like 6 different kinds of horses, but essentially I would prime them in whatever kind of base color, give them an overall coat of, we'll just say brown in this case, like a darker brown. And then I would progressively from above go a little bit lighter and then kind of pick out, each of the muscle groups. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, it obviously depends on what kind of horse it is, but I also got a lot of crap for that too, because apparently I'm not a horse expert. So I painted them all impossible horses. That's what I was told.
Okay, so I had forgotten that you made this video, or I've never seen it or something. I was just relying on you giving the wrong answer to this question, which you did perfectly, Casey, and I thank you. So no, it just illustrates the difference here. But so the videos I was watching, they would do a base coat of like a tan on the horse.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would use their airbrush and start hitting the muscle groups, mostly from atop, with a darker brown.
Really?
And so one, it's just interesting to see somebody work from light to dark.
Yeah.
But also, it's this cat is chewing on the microphone cord. I swear, like it did. I shooed it away because it was purring at me, and now it's chewing on a microphone.
It's got phantom power going into that mic. If he chews through it, he's not gonna have a good time.
Staring at me. Yeah. Okay, it's rolling. Whoa. Okay. I'm not talking about cats. Actually, I need to learn how to paint cats, but that is a different story.
Completely.
I'm talking about horses right now. So most creatures, most animals are darker on the top and lighter on the belly.
Sure. Okay. I see where you're going with this.
So as you know, mini painters, we're trying to get our sort of natural lighting effect, or our highlights where we have lighter colors on top because we're lit diffuse by the sun, sort of thing.
Yeah.
The sunlight passing through clouds, landing on the back of our Saurus warrior, just lighting everything up a little bit. But if you're like actually trying to paint an animal the way the colors are on an animal, most of the time the spine is a much darker color than the belly is.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Looking around for my cats here. For one of my cats, it's very obvious that that is the case. And
right.
Of course, they're never useful, so it's not here at the right moment. But
okay, you've got illustrations right behind you. You got like a pointer or a laser?
Yeah. So depending on how we cut this frame, there is an orange cat behind me with a white belly. And that is a very common cat type.
Sure.
You know, just got that white belly and a darker colored rest of the pelt. But anyway, this lady painting this model horse starts off with a light tan, and then from above is putting on darker colors. So not only working from light to dark, but also just is completely swapping the most common way that us mini painters paint.
Right.
You know, we often, you know, a lot of us just were taught to start with a black prime job and then to put on our lighter colors. Maybe there's a wash in there somewhere, but then we're building up highlights with the lighter highlights going on top.
Right.
But anyway, here's this horse painter who's using that airbrush to get those smooth transitions between the different flavors of brown, and is putting the darker parts on top. And I mean, it's just fascinating, and it makes sense. The models look good. They're using basically the same tools and supplies that we use, but it just kind of blew my mind. Just like, wow, there are multiple ways to do this. And it was one of those switches where it's like, wow, okay, this makes sense. There is something that we can learn here. And
yeah, there's a lot of horses still in Warhammer.
Yeah. And of course, these people love horses, and so they actually know what patterns horses are. You know, some of them you got your Appaloosas, you got your zebras.
We're not horse people, obviously.
We're not horse people.
No, I got so much crap for that, though. Like, I mean, it's like, oh, hey, these horses look cool, but like that would never happen. Yeah, those colors don't ever go together. And it's like, I have no idea. I even looked pictures up, right? Like I looked pictures up of horses and still screwed it up. So yeah.
At least in your example, it was Middle Earth.
That's a good point.
So you're like, elves don't exist either.
Yeah. It's a good comeback, right?
I guess you don't have to go all defensive with that type of comment. You could take
really
it well
didn't.
And be like, you're right. There's a lot I have to learn about horses, and No, I've never seen a horse that looks like that. You're right. You're right.
Yeah. I mean, I thought they looked pretty good, so that's all right.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course there is an issue of scale depending on whether you actually have the highlight on the back or not, you know.
That's the thing that's interesting, or at least it's making me think about it. It's like, if you do have a highlight, or if you're just painting it as like, no, it's just purely gray diffused light coming in, so you're only seeing the color of the horsehair, right? Like,
right.
I don't know, that seems so weird to me. Like, how is it then? Because I mean, I've painted like an underbelly, you know, lighter color or whatever, and the top is darker, but then there's still like a highlighting step to that, so it's just interesting.
Yeah, Vince Venturella in one of his hobby cheating videos, he mentions that, okay, so you're painting an animal. Where do you do the zenithal highlight? Do you do it on the belly, or do you do it on the back? And it's okay to do both.
Sure,
you can do the belly because the animal is a lighter color on the belly, and you can do the back because on such a small figure, lighting effects are not going to do themselves with the natural light in our bedroom, you know,
Sure.
in our game room.
That's a good point.
And that's one of the things with a larger scale is the actual lights that we experience as Brent and Casey in the rooms that we live in for a larger scale models will naturally do some highlighting and shading on a model that's large enough to cast a shadow.
Yeah. I mean, if
but on a very small model, you have to draw that in.
Yeah. That's a good point.
But yeah. Anyway, the horse people, sometimes they use colored pencils. They use kneadable erasers in really clever ways to make like spot patterns on horses.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, that was just one where, you know, I think a lot of people in the mini painting hobby are aware of scale modelers, and some are aware of Gunpla people.
Yeah.
To my knowledge, the scale modelers have more tricks than the Gunpla people do. The Gunpla people, some of them just have pre-colored plastic, which is a good advancement, but
I mean,
doesn't necessarily
I feel like
teach
with
us
them,
a lot.
it's a lot of pin washing and oils and that kind of thing to get those crisp, perfect lines. Yeah, I don't have too much experience with the Gunpla stuff.
Yeah. So part of the purpose of this video is, you know, we're giving you ideas of corners of the hobby you might not have thought about before, and to go do some learning and discovering and, you know, have some fun on your own. But also, if you have recommendations of things we didn't mention to check out,
sure.
like, dig on into it. So, okay, what else? What's another thing that was a big moment for you?
Let's see here.
It can be, you know, types of minis, types of paint supplies.
I'm trying to think of like a big moment, you know what I mean?
All right, I'm going to fill space with a little moment while you think.
Yeah.
So I saw, like, scrolling Instagram today, I saw, this is gaming related but not hobby related. I saw pop-up terrain, as in pop-up book style. So it's like a single page pop-up book where you open up the covers and an administratum building pops up with enough room for like 5 Space Marines to stand on top of it. And it's both the game tile and a building. And let me see, I wrote this down somewhere here, but it's just one of those things like, why did nobody think of this before? This is genius.
Right.
This is how did this not exist before? But yeah, it's just like a child's pop-up book that pops up an elaborate building, or I think some of them pop up like storage crates or something like that. And so it's cardboard terrain, but yeah, it folds down to nothing. It opens up in a second, and anyway, just a little thing that wanted to mention. It's just like, wow. I think I wrote this down. What's this called?
I wanted
you to answer this.
No, I'm trying to, like having terrain or having like a fat mat type of a thing under, on a game table. That was a pretty big deal. I felt like the first time, kind of jumping off the back of this terrain thing while you're looking for that. Yeah, like being able to put a bunch of like matching terrain on an actual table, like completely changed the way that, I looked at the game. And I thought that was pretty exciting for the first time. So yeah, like having easy pop-up, are these like 2x2 squares or are they just individual like buildings?
I think they were actually rectangular, but yeah, you're in the right zone. Like, sure. I don't know, 1x2 square or something like rectangle.
It pops up. That's sweet.
Yeah, but you open it up and then you have, yeah, the kind of inside covers of the pop-up book were a game mat. I mean, they're cardboard, but they're a game surface.
Yeah.
And then the actual pop-up is a piece of terrain that you can stick models on. And it's cardboard or paperboard or whatever, and it probably is not super durable. I haven't seen one in person, but it's a pop-up book.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things like, wow, that's genius. And of course it folds down so that you have just a stack of these things that do not take up very much space. Oh, here's a cat with a white belly. It's just one of those cool things like, wow, people are smart, and why did no one think of this before? And yeah, kind of associated with that is just putting the magnets on the bottom of our minis to store them in cake pans.
Right.
or to transport them. That's one of those things like, wow, we don't have to break our minis with foam. We can stick them to a sheet of steel and have them not bump into each other when we walk around with this sheet of steel, you know?
There's nothing actually touching them. It's a much more protective way to transport them, for sure.
All right, I stalled for you, Casey. What do you got? What's a breakthrough moment for you?
You've had your chance. For me, I just talked about one. You're killing me, man. So 3D printers are cool, right?
Okay, we can walk down this path.
This is just a little.
So the path I was going to walk down is just discovering like a new type of mini or a new company that produces minis that you want to paint, that sort of thing. So, I've talked earlier about like, not caring, generally being aware that War Machine was sold in the store that you were in, but not caring about it at all.
Right. Yeah.
Knowing that, okay, there are non-GW companies out there, but yeah, who cares? Like there's nothing good there. Well, the first time I went to a game convention really was one of these big moments in my life where like, oh, wow, look at the world of awesome stuff that's out there that I could have found before, but I just didn't know about. And it's one of those changing events like, wow, there's so many styles, so many settings, so many ways to paint, so many, an example that I'm going to keep talking about over and over again is the first time I went to Gen Con, because just walking around the vendor hall there of, okay, GW has a booth, and its booth is located in row 30, stall 12.
Right, it's not an
30-012 is where the GW booth is, yeah. And there are 40 rows of game companies of mini, half of which have minis. Yeah. And you just walk through there and know that you're, only seeing like 1% of the awesome stuff that's out there. And I just remember, some of these companies, I just see one mini in particular on display or like a cool poster or something, and like, whoa, that's a thing.
Right.
And so, part of this is when conventions are a thing again, try to go to one. Like the vendor hall alone is probably worth it.
Yeah. I mean, when I went to LVO, which was really my first like mini convention. And I mean, that's a tournament, more than anything, but they have a vendor hall section, and it's kind of nuts to see how much stuff out there, even something like paint ranges. Like Citadel paints are not the only paints out there, and it's kind of insane when you start to really dive into that and try other paints. There might be another paint range out there that you like way more than GW paint.
Yeah.
Like I've used a ton of different paints, and I think, I guess an interesting one, an eye-opening moment, was realizing that in order to paint Warhammer figures or to play Warhammer, that you do not need to exclusively use Games Workshop products. Like lifting that barrier off, kind of bringing it back to that whole airbrush thing I was talking about earlier. Like I had the Citadel brush, and I'm thinking like, no, this is how you paint these models, with a Citadel brush and their little tiny pots of paint, right? And I think when I broke away from that really elevated my hobby in a lot of ways. Being able to just use whatever product I needed to, or whatever paint from whatever company, like, whatever GW skin tone is for Caucasian skin isn't the end all for skin tones, right? I'd say that was a pretty big moment for me in the hobby overall. It was just getting away from that.
Yeah. And this sounds so obvious and so stupid, right? But for some of you out there, like, there will come a moment where you understand what we're talking about, and it won't sound quite so stupid anymore. But yeah, I remember back going to the Keep game store in South Portland, Maine, and they had their Games Workshop range, and right next to that they had their Vallejo paints, and that was another situation like, Vallejo paints, what do I need? Why are you even like wasting space in your store with these? Like, what's...
That's what it felt like, though. Like
garbage out
weird
of dropper bottles. So you're committing to waste a couple of drops of paint every time. Yeah. I'm only gonna use half a drop of that paint, and the rest of it is gonna be.
I mean, I give you that one from back in the day when the paint pots actually worked. Totally give you that one.
Well, even still, I from those days, I did get a couple of bottles of Vallejo back then.
Yeah.
And fast forward 15 years, guess which bottles still work and which ones are solid.
For sure.
It's the Vallejo bottles that still work after all that time. And
yeah.
Maybe it did take those 15 years for me to learn that, okay, this is not money wasted when I buy a bottle of this paint,
Yeah.
And it also, maybe it took me 15 years to learn that the couple of drops that you squirt out to paint for the evening actually aren't that high of a percentage of what's in that bottle as a whole, right. And that bottle is going to last you for a while. Except for black, which you rim all your bases in. You got to buy a black every once in a while, but the rest of the colors, you're fine.
Yeah.
Plus you also have a airbrush and you're spraying everything goblin green. You might have to buy an extra green, but
goblin green. Somebody still makes that, right? The P3?
Vallejo does. Yeah.
Vallejo well, yeah, I mean, they make a goblin green, but do they make goblin green?
No, they don't. Yeah, not quite. There definitely was a difference. No, Vallejo, thinking back to the hexagon, I think hexagon, maybe octagon. And whenever I started with the Games Workshop line, the names on the Vallejo paint at that point in time were very similar to the names on the Vallejo GW. It very much seemed that Vallejo was copying off of the Games Workshop paint names at that time. Of course, now they've stuck with those same names for 20 years, and so now they own them. But yeah, Scorpion Green from Games Workshop, Scorpy Green from Vallejo, that was always a fun one.
Right now it's called Escorpina.
Bestial Brown.
Yeah.
Bestial Brown from Games Workshop. Beastie Brown from Vallejo. That was Goblin Green from GW. Goblin Green from Vallejo.
Like, you can't copyright that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't trademark goblin and green. Oh, that's funny.
But yeah, the willingness to use other brands of game model paints, and then the willingness to use other brands of model paints, and then the willingness to just see what artists have to offer.
Yeah.
Like, these are all little barriers that when you break through them, you're like, oh,
it's so weird too.
Tiny paintbrushes have existed for hundreds of years and are not all sold at Games Workshop stores, you know?
For double the price.
Yeah. So, want to talk about some different lines of minis here? Like, just
like why don't we throw down a small list? Just a teeny tiny
small list. So, yeah, we were talking about this episode. And we're like, we could just talk about different non-GW mini companies, but I think that would get pretty boring after a while. So let's just do a couple to kind of outline the range of cool stuff that are still minis for games.
There are two in particular that I want to talk about because they're very similar companies. Die Hard Miniatures and Dark Sword Miniatures. They both make like pewter models in kind of the old way, right? Like, it's hand sculpted, made for pretty much Dungeons and Dragons. Like, Die Hard Miniatures is a little different in that they're kind of going for this old Warhammer vibe, like specifically like advertised as we make old Hammer minis. Like, that's their whole thing. But there's some really cool stuff that you don't see too often anymore, with that kind of hand sculpted look to it. You know what I mean? Like those old kind of fat faced models, I guess. Yeah. Pretty cool though. I like them a lot.
So you can go back in time if you want.
Yeah.
If you're looking for that nostalgia. Yeah.
I think there's still a lot of people who are like looking for the way things used to be, I guess. They're very used to like a certain kind of model, or they want to reminisce about some of those older types of models. Both of these companies kind of do that and definitely make me think of those old models like back when I started. Just kind of funky sculpts, but like really there's a lot of character in them, those kinds of things. So yeah, I appreciate that some companies out there are still hand sculpting and, pewter injection molding and whatever models. It's great.
Yeah. And there are a lot of companies still doing that. One on my list, I didn't know whether I'd mention or not, but Crocodile Games is one that I ran into at a convention. And, the minis that caught my eyes were Crocodile Warriors.
Right.
And they're just, crocodiles standing upright with like big, stupid, toothy grins and holding a mace or something. And, that sort of thing could be in Warhammer. It is not exactly in Warhammer, but it's one of those things. It's just like, I didn't know I was looking for this. This is a discovery. This is going on my list of things to do one of these days.
Just paint a bunch of crocs.
Paint a bunch of crocs. Yeah. The same company, Crocodile Games, also had Yetis. And again, I've been talking about Yetis for a year or two now.
Yeah, man, it's been a while.
I won't. Haven't stopped talking about Yetis.
Don't stop.
Why are there not more Yetis? We need more Yetis. Get in there. Walking around like gladiators, Arena Rex. I didn't. Of course, I want to paint gladiators. Like, Spartacus is an awesome show. Why would I not want to just really, really get in there with that? The movie Gladiator is pretty entertaining.
Say, like, I'd paint a tiny Russell Crowe. That sounds fun.
Yeah. Of course, then if we start doing like Master and Commander Russell Crowe, then we're getting on into those tiny ship people, and then
that's a whole other thing, right?
That is a whole other thing. The people maybe making giant Victory, like HMS Victory. What?
That sounds right too. Yeah.
HMS Victory, is that the flagship of Lord Nelson? Something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
These big like ships of the line from 1800.
Right.
Ooh.
So is the feud between like scale modelers with cars and trains and boats, is that just a whole separated thing that they're all just feuding all the time? I feel like that's
I think the sailing vessel boats are different from the Age of Steel boats. I think those are two different things.
I'm just assuming everyone hates each other.
Oh, there's rivalry, I'm sure.
Right, yeah. If you
put once you start getting into the ironclads, I bet there's some sharp lines being drawn for sure. Yeah. But anyway, in our little world, it's always amazing to me how much there is to discover in our little world.
Yeah.
Like, let's talk about changing the art style. There's still minis, but there are some absolutely adorable minis that you can buy right now if you want to. And so I think I've mentioned Dungeons and Doggies on this show before.
Yep.
We've alluded to Cats and Catacombs, although I forgot what the name was at the time.
Yeah, Mice and Mystics.
Oh yeah, is that the same company? I don't
know. No, it's a board game, but it has cute little mice that you can paint.
Adorable. And all of our skills from painting Imperial Guardsmen with their melta guns can be put right to use on these cute little dogs that have their magician's hat on and their adventuring packs, you know?
Yes.
And sometimes that little change of pace is just what you need to invigorate yourself and get you back to the hobby again, you know?
Yeah, having a palate cleanser is definitely a thing. Yeah.
I mean, it starts as a palate cleanser, but then all of a sudden you've got a lot of adventuring animals.
Right. Yeah. I started with one dog, one dungeon. Yeah, I ended up with a whole mess of animals. An entire animal shelter's worth of dungeons and doggies.
And that's fine. That's good. Good, right. You know? Look, I dare you to Google search Anteater Dungeons and Dragons. There are, you know, almost every animal has been made into a fun little adventuring sci-fi fantasy character at this point. And with more being added all the time.
Yeah, and weirdly, except
in particular, I'll mention
wheelchairs until now, but yeah.
And that's one of those things, like when somebody figures out that, I don't think it was that long ago that somebody figured out Dungeons and Dragons, but they're all dogs.
Right, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, I think that was fairly recent when somebody figured that out. And then everybody was like, that's a great idea. Why did no one think of this before? And they've made several sets of them now. And then they expanded to cats and good.
Yeah.
It's not like Redwall hadn't been a thing. Redwall had been out for forever, but I don't think that many adventuring animals, minis had been made. Some, sure.
Yeah. You just bring them back.
But yeah, like you can discover all of these super cute little creatures. Grebo Games has a line called Cutimals. Cute animals, Cutimals.
Sure.
Yeah, and it's just like cute little penguins and owls and bears and stuff. And they're adorable.
They're stumpy little guys. They have like orcs and they have like little pig faces. Stuff we never thought would ever be probably in existence.
Right. And on the, you know, this stuff that cannot be rated anything other than G, like absolutely general audience. But then on the other side of that, if you want to discover the polar opposite side of that, there is hard mature or at least hard R stuff out there. So
yeah, I mean I've seen some things. Just giant dicks on everything, poking out at all your other models.
Yeah. Casey and I both, you know, preparing for this, looked at the homepage of Kingdom Death today, and just what they choose to put on their homepage. yeah, that is a new area of the hobby.
Yeah.
or something that you can discover. I mean, they've been around for several years at this point, but
Yeah.
that is certainly something that is there for you to discover if that's what you want to do. If you want more like
really cool
R-rated and probably not crossing too far over from R, like Creature Caster has some pretty spooky demons, or some very messed up demons.
Yeah, but I'd say they kind of keep it at the rated R level, whereas Kingdom Death is such a mixed bag. Like, you just never know what you're gonna get with that company. Like, they make models for everybody. I mean, some of them aren't for everybody, but the range of models.
For everybody? Yeah, let's change the wording on that.
Yeah. I'm saying that the range, they can make some for you over here, or for you over here. There's a range.
Yes. Yeah, we don't know exactly what to say about Kingdom Death. I think that's coming across, but that is one of those things that's out there to discover, and for some people that absolutely are into that crazy, absolutely unfiltered insanity. And
it is insane.
And for some people, like, yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But there's so much out there waiting to be discovered, and we're trying to provide, like, little on-ramps or off-ramps to some of those things, give you some ideas.
Yeah, just some of the interesting things that we may have found. Because, I mean, like I was saying about the, using Games Workshop products exclusively, not even knowing that really there was something else out there. And I know there are still people like that. If you were introduced into the hobby via Games Workshop, you might not even realize that these companies exist. Like, somebody is probably making the perfect model for you right now. And that might be Games Workshop, but it might be Kingdom Death. Like, you never know. So it doesn't hurt to go check things out.
Yeah, there are certainly lists of other games out there. I think like Adepticon, you can find the list of vendors that should have been there. Gen Con, you can find the list of vendors that should have been there. And this is a good starting places to just start to waggle your toes into all the possibilities that are out there.
Yeah, there are a lot.
And yeah, I don't know if we're properly conveying the feeling that comes along with realizing that something exists that you didn't know exists, that you didn't know you wanted, but all of a sudden, like, wow, this is a great idea.
Isn't that just our
a few episodes ago,
in general? Like figuring figure out that something exists that we didn't know we wanted, and now we just want. It's like the entire nerd culture just summed up.
Yeah, but keep your eyes open,
Oh yeah.
Couple episodes ago, Casey mentioned the idea for Pokemon minis,
right?
And like, my mind was blown. All of a sudden, I wanted those, and apparently there's a kind of a limited line out there already.
Sure,
but
yeah.
I don't know if I want a limited line. That defeats the whole purpose.
No, I want a full-on skirmish battle game with evolving Pokemon. That's what I want.
Right.
Yeah.
Someday, Casey. Someday.
Hey, we got 3D printers. It's like, we literally could just do that ourselves.
That is true.
Yeah.
That's a wide open field there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just got to get some people who don't care about getting sued by Nintendo or whoever owns Pokemon, and you're in business.
So the last video I did was like talking about converting orcs and stuff and 3D printing parts. I got a lot of people like, oh man, like GW gonna come after you. And I was like, why? And in the same respect, why would the Pokemon company come after me for printing Pokemon? I mean, I get that there's an intellectual property, but I'm also not selling it to anyone. It's for my home personal use. Like, there's nothing technically illegal about that.
They could come after you for that sweet ad revenue, but
yeah, okay.
They didn't invent jetpacks, so I'm not sure how much of a claim
that's
they have
kind of
there.
where I'm at. Yeah. And printing out orcs that are obviously not GW orcs, not claiming that they are, like, just because I attached them to a GW product, like, I'm sorry, that's not grounds for anything. Like,
Yeah.
It's fine.
You also just said that you decided not to sell these orcs, you know? It's not like you're going to pop these up as on eBay saying that they are,
right,
you know, ORKZ orcs.
Right.
And
even then, like, I don't know. I'm not too worried about that. But, yeah, printing a Pokemon game. I'm sure there's a skirmish system out there that would work. Some kind of like wizard fighting. Is there a wizard fighting skirmish game? Like, is Harry Potter a skirmish game yet? Where are these things? I need these things.
I feel like I've seen Harry Potter minis.
There are.
I do feel like I've seen that. Yeah.
They're super expensive though, because they're like very limited Kickstarter. I think they just did another run of them or something. It's kind of like the, what was it, Night Models? I think it is Night Models. I can't remember. I don't know. But yeah, that's pretty limited. But yeah.
Look, I think where we're going with this is look into painting model horses. I wouldn't joke with you about this. Like, look into painting Briar model horses and prepare to have your mind blown. Like, it'll change your life. Like,
I'm right there with you. I mean, the fact that they just do it backwards is insane.
That's just the beginning, my friend. And then they get out the colored pencils. And they, well, yeah, I mean, it's a little master class, if you will, in painting textures, because on these horses, I think some of their manes and their tails are sculpted with kind of implying individual hairs, but I think most of it is just smooth plastic for, you know, the bulk of the horse. But horses have tons of fur on there, and so, you know, all these clever ideas for getting the texture of hair on a horse, which is fairly, you know, it lays flat and it's got like a sheen to it. And there certainly are individual hairs there, but you can't paint them all. And how are you going to get that effect? Like there's tips and tricks, I'm telling you.
Definitely.
All right. Let's leave people with that to think about and close up here, Casey.
That's exactly what I was about to do. And on that note, thank you again for joining us on another episode of Paint Bravely. If you enjoyed this podcast, please help us out by leaving us a review on iTunes, subscribing to the YouTube channel, and sharing this message with your hobby friends. And as always, we appreciate each and every one of you for listening, and we will talk to you next time.
We appreciate you, and we will talk to you next time.